Good afternoon, ladies and gents, and welcome to this afternoon's live event on School Business Tech. Today, I've got a wonderful guest that's going to be joining me, Tony Sheppard, and we're going to be talking about data protection for a digital education. As you know, online learning is just absolutely taking over primary and secondary education at the moment with current lockdown measures. And as the adoption of technology surges forward, it's important to note that the increased use of these systems will have an increased generation in data. So in this episode with Tony, we're going to discuss about the resources available to schools, why technology companies should be working with education agencies to create a standardized format for information sharing. And he'll be sharing some of his top tips. Bit of background on Tony. Well, Tony is a leading educational technologist and has been working with senior leadership teams in schools, local authorities, and project management within national education programs. And he is a big vocal advocate for the roles of data protection and privacy within education. Good afternoon, Tony. How you doing?
Good afternoon. Yeah, it's still in lockdown city here. I'm not quite getting the Michael Sheen beard yet, but it's getting there.
Is it? But so remind me, where are we in your background?
Oh, this is Hufflepuff Common Room. So
it's
the little things that just keep us happy.
Very gig. I like it. I like it a lot. Okay. So, Tony, thanks a lot for joining us today. Really, I know that a lot of people will be interested to hear some of your thoughts that you've got. So we're going to get straight into the questions. And the first question I've got for you today, which is, tell me, if I'm a data protection officer, what resources are available for me currently?
Well, there's still always the core of the Information Commissioner's Office's website. So you've got just even the basics of the 12 steps for the adoption of GDPR in there, the references over to the National Cybersecurity Centre and their guidance around cybersecurity. You've also got the DFE's Data Protection Toolkit for Schools. That's now referenced within Keeping Children Safe in Education. So there is the clear link in there between safeguarding and data protection and privacy. The group that actually wrote the Data Protection Toolkit have actually spun off, and they've got the educationdataMatters.org.uk website, which again has got a raft of guidance which comes from schools, MATs, local authorities, EdTech, and privacy and data protection folk themselves. Information Records Management Society still have their Records Management Toolkit for schools. It's the Bible for information management, really, and records management. You really should, if you're not a member of IRMS, go and have a look. It's cheap for schools. You've then got all of the data protection officers out there. Now, just because you're a DPO, there's lots of other people that you can get resources and advice from. And really, you're looking for things like the qualifications such as the CIPPE or CIPM from AIPP, the Institute for the International Association of Privacy Professionals. You've got things like the BSc Data Protection Practitioners Award, and there's loads of people that are dedicated to data protection and privacy, whether through legal or things like that, but you need to just make sure that they have a really good understanding of skills. So there's a massive amount of stuff out there. It does take some time to sift through, and we are aware of that.
Right. And I suppose if I was, I'm a data protection officer and my first point of call, what would that be? Like out of that list, because you gave me a number of them. If I'm a DPO and I was going to go to start with one place, where would you recommend?
I'd still recommend the DFE Data Protection Toolkit for schools. It may not have everything in there. It may have a particular way of working around it, but it is a cracking starting point and will get you either on the journey or getting you access to the right information to continue on through whatever resources and support or anything else that you need.
Brilliant. Second question, what are EdTech or school business technology companies and schools doing to reduce the how can EdTech or school business tech companies and schools work together to reduce the administration?
No, it's one of those things of where, let's face it, like many of us, schools won't read through a 36-page data processing agreement or rafts of terms and conditions. Most companies know this, and but they'll soon be facing a need for schools to be able to find details about what's happening with data really quickly. Adopting any new tech should involve a risk assessment in the same way that going on a school trip somewhere to a new location needs a risk assessment. Those people that run the trips and the locations, they know that. They're helpful towards schools. EdTech companies need to get into the same mindset, get used to it. In the same way that you're meant to have a layered privacy notice, so it's easily readable in different layers, different sections, different levels of complexity. Why not do the same with any agreements you've got, or T's and C's? Make sure the language is easy to be reused by schools. Because going back to that legalese again, remember, schools have got to communicate some of this to parents as well as the children as well. And if we talked about the children, why not be able to let schools explain things to children? If EdTech companies don't know, there is the Education in a Connected World, Education for a Connected World program. That's from UCAS, the UK Charity for Internet Safety. It's available on the DFE and government websites. And in there, it talks about levels of competency and understanding around digital life, including data and privacy in there. I'd recommend that everybody goes and has a look at that, whether you're an EdTech company or school. It's such a fantastic resource to go and have a look at.
Right, and so I think what you're kind of saying is that really the EdTech and the school business tech companies probably need to take a bit of responsibility for this. They need to prep their content so that it's usable for or palatable and understandable, basically, for the school audience and potentially their audience behind them, which could be parents, carers, students, who they might then have to translate this forward. So if they could go one step further in that thinking, that would be really helpful for schools. Is that what I'm hearing? Yeah,
I mean, communication is going to be key with all of this. So the better we communicate, the better everybody will be with it. Okay,
brilliant. I'm a DPO, I'm in a school, and people are signing up for systems left, right, and center. I've got them sharing access and logins, everything's going out on social media. It's all going, and I'm sitting there, my literally head in hands going, this is going to fall down at some point. What can I do to get internal support I don't want to DPOs don't want to be the killjoy, right? Everyone's having fun, they're progressing things there, and so you don't want to be the killjoy. But what can I do to get better internal support around data protection?
I mean, I mentioned earlier about the ICO resources, the DFE Education Data Matters. I mean, the DFE Data Protection Toolkit for schools, because that crosses over with keeping children safe in education, which also clearly says data protection shouldn't stop you from sharing information where it's needed to protect children. Just says you need to be mindful of data protection principles, so it's clearly in there already. But there are companies out there that provide additional support. Folk like GDPR and schools can help schools work more efficiently and effective, making sure that there are good standard ways of people sharing what is going on with data within schools. Whether you're running an in-house DPO or an outsourced DPO, if you've got an in-house DPO, having some peer support, somebody else that you can actually chat to, whether it's somebody else in another school, whether it's somebody at the local authority. There's lots of outsourced groups that provide, just that. Can you just help me out with something? Whether it's local authorities, the Education Data Hub up in Derbyshire, people like Data Protection.education course group, School Pro, Data Schools for Schools, there are many more. But then you've also got a number of strong online communities. So, techies have been using EduGeek for ages, IRMS for anyone dealing with data management. The regional school business manager groups are a mine of information. But a common message you'll get from absolutely everybody is that this is not a job for a single person. And that's one of the things you need to remember. And that's also one of the barriers you've got, because when you're looking for internal support, people think, oh, it's your job, you've got to go and do it. Actually, it's not. As with safeguarding, it's everybody's job. And if you look at the ICO's materials, they have an accountability toolkit, which, It's not so much different to the Ofsted framework, to be honest. When you go and have a look at it, it gives you a series of expectations, it tells you where the indicators of effectiveness are, that sort of things, may need, well, it does need translation for schools. That's why, you have some peer support. But that first section of that toolkit talks about information governance. Governance, that's where it gets driven. You need to make sure that at the very top, it's understood that this is a whole school thing. So if you need internal support, start at the top. Get it wrapped into how the school works. People talk about culture change. It's taken, 8-9 years for safeguarding to get where it is with that culture change. We shouldn't expect too much of a different journey with data protection and privacy. Hopefully we've learned some things on the way, so it's actually a little bit quicker, but, we'll see.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely, like you said, start at the top and it'll kind of help disseminate it down. But going back to your earlier point, communication is also key, isn't it? What is the impact of this? And it is really hard. People want new systems. They want to be developing stuff. They want to be progressing, and anything that gets in the way can be seen as a block or a barrier.
Yeah, risk assessments are usually seen as that barrier. And that's why, there's lots of tools. There's some tools, there's good companies out there that can help you or train you in this is the easy way that you do those risk assessments. They, help you with screening questions. They tell you which other people in the school to get involved in these things. Adopting any new technology or changing anything within the school, important word, change. It's change management. It's not just one person shouting, everybody do stuff. It's all about a group of people coming together and working out the best way of doing things. So it can't just be one person. You get seen as a blocker if it's one person. It's got to be about a group of people coming together. And it should fit in with how you already do changes within your school. It shouldn't be it reinvents the wheel. It should quite easily slide into what you already do.
Yeah, no, I like that. Final question for me, and it's the question I ask everybody, which is, what's your predictions for school business technology over the next 3 to 5 years?
This is one of those things of where there's lots of things that if you'd asked me this 18 months ago, I would have had a particular, a view on it. And the lockdown has completely changed that. The virus has completely changed that. The thing that we've seen is there's a real rapid growth for EdTech for learning. There's starting to be a corresponding growth for EdTech with pastoral care through technology, but there's still a gap around making better use of the cloud and back office tools to make life easier for, running and managing schools and actually keeping on top of things. We've seen the studies about how tech can pay for itself when used correctly, such as, Professor Don Passey's review of cost savings through VLEs. That was 10 years ago, but the figures still stand and still work. Now schools have generally either got, Microsoft 365 or G Suite. There are plenty of options to look at. As the MIS space also heats up again, the successful ones will be those that bring and support improvements to your school business tech. It will be a challenge for existing very good packages around communication and data integration. And that's going to be one of the good things for market, as some of these tools are possibly consolidated, are improved over the next 2 years. I can see quite a good amount of change around communication, how that all fits in with how schools run and operate. And, eventually we will see, back in the old days of Vector, they had the parental engagement triangle between school, parent and child. And that's still a magic triangle. And the more that we can get EdTech focused towards that, the better. And I can see that happening. But there's been a lot of change recently. It's going to be interesting to see who has the better voice for some of this.
Lovely.
Not just better.
Lovely. And on that note, Tony, we'll wrap it up for the today's session. So once again, thank you very, very much for joining us and sharing your kind of insights on data protection for digital education. For more information on Tony, you can go and find him, follow him on Twitter at GrumbleDuck, or on LinkedIn. You can add Tony on /GrumbleDuck and you can find him there. If you want to follow the show, search School Business Tech on YouTube, or again, you can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter, where again you can follow myself and I'll signpost you to where that needs to be. All that leaves me to say is, Tony, have an absolutely fantastic day. Really appreciate your time. Thanks again.
Not a problem. Thanks a lot.